BYP Network Event of the Year. At Morgan Stanley, commit to diversity and inclusion is one of our core values. This belief underpins our commitment to cultivating a diverse workforce and creating a culture of support and belonging for all our employees. We are so proud of our ongoing partnership with BYP Network. We're pleased to be here with you all today for our event, focusing on the recruitment process, how to utilize your transferable skills, and top tips to improve your CV. We've got an impressive panel of Morgan Stanley employees with us who will discuss their career journeys and personal experience as Black professionals, sharing insights to how they approach the interview process and advise on how you can apply similar methods to impress a potential employer. Before we jump right in, I'm Fru Collins. I will be moderating the discussions today. I'm a vice president in our risk management division focused on climate risk and ESG data strategy. I've been at the firm 9 years, going on 10. I'm holding on to the single digits. I'm very passionate about this topic because I believe a fulfilling and mostly important within rich career for a person that looks like me or comes from a diverse background is at Morgan Stanley and is one of the best kept secrets. And I've made it my mission to expose it and share the good news for the past couple of years through different channels. My hope is that you will leave here today inspired to take that one action that will put you in the path to joining this firm. I am proud to be associated with for almost, I've been proud to be associated with for almost a decade now. I'm joined by 4 of my colleagues on the panel. I'll give them the opportunity to introduce themselves shortly. Then we'll all move to the panel discussion. We'll leave time at the end for some Q&A, so please submit questions via the chat functionality. We'll also aim to weave as many of your questions as possible into today's conversation as well. So let's get started and introduce our amazing panelists. Today, our panelists are from what internally we call our company and operations division. They all bring unique experiences and perspectives and will make for a valuable discussion. Their stories will provide you with valuable advice and practical takeaways to ensure you stand out to any potential employer, help you to be successful in an interview and elevate your CV. It's important to remember, Morgan Stanley has a wide variety of divisions and teams. When it comes to interviewing, each division and team will be different. It's not a cookie cutter approach, but hopefully today we can give you some top tips and tricks to help you conquer the recruitment process with confidence. So let's start. I will start with Sharon. Sharon, the floor is yours to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Fru. Hi, everyone. So my name's Sharon Sutherland. I've been with Morgan Stanley for 11 months. I'm currently a business manager, a vice president business manager within operations within the divisional management group. I am really excited about today's session because this time last year, I was actually on the other side of this. I wasn't at Morgan Stanley, but I tapped into this actual event before I joined. And I was so inspired by the people that were actually talking on the panel about how working at Morgan Stanley is. One of the great things that I found about this organization is the fact that it is so diverse. You walk in and you see a wide range of lots of different people, different ethnicities, and we're very, very inclusive. So I'm hoping by the end of this session, you walk away with what we've all spoken about to show what a great firm this is. I'd like to be able to share the fact that I've managed to get into banking, not through the conventional way, but using autonomy and being able to use my different skill sets to get in. And I think one of the things that Phil also mentioned is the fact that there are so many different divisions within the bank. So it's about flexing your skill set to actually when you actually apply for a role here. So looking very forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. I will hand the floor to Fee. Fee.
Thanks, Fru. Hi, everyone. Fee Alade here. I'm an associate in risk management, specifically in risk governance. I've been at Morgan Stanley for just under 6 months now. I'm very happy to have been asked to do the panel today because I joined Morgan Stanley having met Chantel last September, I think, at a BYP event. at which point I thought that sounds like a really good firm to work for. So I applied, went through the whole interview process, everything we'll be talking about today. Which obviously went very well because I'm sitting here. But yeah, as Fru pointed out, I've worked at a few financial services organizations now, and this one does as it says, and that's not always true. So yeah, very much looking forward to the discussion today. Thanks, Fru.
Thank you, Fee. Brilliant. Chantel.
Thanks, Fru. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Chantel Nyarko. I sit within our Human Resources Division as a director within our diversity and inclusion team. So I look after a lot of our sort of diversity recruitment practices alongside my colleagues in talent acquisition, look after some of our partnerships and memberships. I've been at Morgan Stanley for just coming up to 7 years now. I previously sat within the talent acquisition function as a recruiter, looking after what we call our sales and trading division. So I looked after research, equities, fund services, and a number of other smaller divisions as well. So I'm really happy to be here. Obviously, having worked in recruitment for 5 years, I feel like I've picked up a few sort of tricks and tips along the way that I'm more than happy to share with the group and sort of give back. You'll hear a lot about our core values at Morgan Stanley, and being committed to diversity and inclusion is one of them, but also giving back. And I see this as an opportunity to be able to give back to the community and sort of impart my wisdom. So really happy to be here alongside my esteemed colleagues.
Brilliant. Excellent. Last but not the least, Isaiah.
Thanks, Fru. Hey, everyone, really happy to be here as well, much like the rest of the panelists that we've just heard from. So my name is Isaiah Duma, and I'm a VP within the finance division, more specifically the FP&A team, so financial planning and analysis. And what we do is basically provide management of insights as to the firm's performance, sort of on a periodic basis. It was a really interesting role, and actually I've been with Morgan Stanley for just coming up to 7 years now, but it's been my only job since uni. So it's been, it's been a whole roller coaster of a journey, going from sort of analyst or industrial placement through to analyst and sort of up to VP. So I'm really excited to be here and sort of explain my journey and hopefully provide you with some insights into how you can join the industry and also join Morgan Stanley as a firm.
Thank you, Isaiah. Thank you all. I hope you all agree this is going to make for an interesting discussion. Let's delve more into topics. In terms of this session, we are going to start with some questions I've prepared. But as mentioned earlier, we'll take time for Q&A for the audience too. So please submit questions via the Q&A chat in Zoom. We'll answer as many as we can and also try and weave them in the conversation as we go along. My first question, I'll direct it to Isaiah. I'm not giving you a break there, Isaiah, but I'll ask, what advice would you give to someone applying for a role within financial service for the first time?
Yeah, good question. Look, I think it depends on your level and your experience, right, and what level you're coming in at. But I think the key thing is it's such a big industry, and it's such a, there's so many different roles that are all very different in terms of nature, in terms of the day-to-day as to what they do, right? So coming in fresh, it's quite hard to understand and get a true appreciation of what you'll be doing on a day-to-day basis. But I think you definitely have to do your research, and there's probably two main methods of doing that, right? It's people and then online. So people, by that I don't mean sending blanket emails to people on LinkedIn or cold calling people and trying to get them to spend 30 minutes with you. That does work for some people. I don't think it works for everyone, but it's attending events like today, asking questions to people that are working in the industry, building your network, right? So if you don't have one now, probably a good time to think about building one, a professional one that is, right? So people in the industry, it could be alumni from your uni, it could be people that have pivoted, as Sharon was saying, right, from different careers. It could be, it could be friends and family. You might have an uncle or a friend that's in the industry that can give you some insights. And I think that's one thing that I used definitely when I was applying. So at the grassroots level, I had a friend that had a sales and trading internship, and he was really good in providing me insights into how the process worked, what types of things I should look out for, et cetera, and hopefully we can get into some of those later on today. But I think that one's definitely key. And if you don't have sort of a person that you can reach out to, like, I'm pretty sure you can definitely find one. If you can't, you also have online. So a good research method is the firm's 10Q or 10K. So every quarter and every year, the firm publishes financial statements and insights into how the firm operates, what the divisions are, how the business makes money, and you can find that on our investor relations page. So that's a really good insight that will give you, it's a long read, so kudos to you if you manage to make it all the way through, but there's definitely going to be some insights that you can pick from there that you wouldn't be able to find anywhere else. That would be my top tip, right? Another tip that I'll quickly give is to try and get a good understanding of the role that you are going to be applying for. So once you understand what we do as a bank, try and match your skill sets with what role you'll be applying for, and make sure that you can speak about those and bring those out. And we'll probably get into that a bit later as well. But definitely think about, your skill set. If you're a technical person, does it make sense for you to go in a role where you want to be using that technical expertise? Will you be happy long term? Right, those kind of conversations that you should have with yourself are quite important as well.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Isaiah, for that. I think for all of you listening, there is, from what Isaiah is saying, there's a wide range of things we do. So don't simply be put off by the fact that he has an investment bank. We're being referred to as an investment bank. There's room for different skills. So it's one big nugget that I'll take away from what Isaiah is saying there. I would also like to bring in Chantel to see if she has anything to add from what Isaiah just gave us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I completely echo what Isaiah was saying, especially about being tactical about building your network. Sitting in the recruitment team, as you can imagine, I used to get flooded with a lot of individuals just sort of sending me those blanket emails that I know were sent to 7 or 8 or 10 other recruiters. So you can definitely spot sort of the ones that are genuine. And I think the thing that stands out for me is the passion, is the why. So I like to think of it as sort of looking at it from a layered perspective. So firstly, why investment banking, especially if you're pivoting into it? What are you not getting out of your current industry, current role, current team that investment banking could give you? Next up is why Morgan Stanley specifically? So it's well and good sort of wanting to, like, coming into an interview saying, I want to be X, I want to work in human resources, but why do you want to work at human resources within Morgan Stanley? What research, to Isaiah's point, have you done that sort of differentiates Morgan Stanley specifically to our competitors? And then the team, sort of really understanding what the team do and sort of what you can bring and why you're passionate about working in that team. I was reading Carla Harris's book. I hope everybody on the line knows who Carla Harris is, but one of her earlier books, Strategize to Win. And she says there are 3 key questions that everybody should ask themselves when they're looking for a role. And one of them is, what kind of content do you want in your role? I think look beyond things like job titles, look about what the actual content is. I think Sharon mentioned we've got a number of different divisions. So whilst you might think my skill set is aligned to X division, there might be a team in another division that you haven't thought about. So be open and do your research and think about the actual sort of day-to-day activities and what you're getting out of the role, rather than just the title of being a trader or a banker. What is it that you want to get out? What gaps are you trying to fill? And will this role sort of marry up with that? So that's my key takeaway on top of what Isaiah said.
Brilliant, Chantel. I think you quoted Carla Harris. I will top you up. I will bring you up one by quoting Barack Obama, who recently in one of his interviews said, you should focus on what you want to do rather than the titles, right? Focus on delivering, focus on doing, and not focus on, oh, well, how does it sound? Because like Isaiah and Chantel have been saying, there is what is important is your skill set, and not necessarily where you are in the bank, right? There is a need for a particular skill set in a particular place in the bank at a particular time. So it's important for you to do your research. It's important for you to try and understand exactly what you want to do. And by all means, once you've done your research, you will be able to find something that we can offer to you as well. That is brilliant. I think now going into some practical examples as to how can you make yourself a candidate? How can a candidate make themselves appealing to Morgan Stanley? And some of that will come through their CV. So I want to direct a question to my colleagues on the panel. How can you make your CV stand out in a sea of application? There's so many people that want to work for Morgan Stanley. So I will be directing that question to Sharon. Sharon?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. As I said, it's the top of the meeting. I joined Morgan Stanley 11 months ago, so this is quite fresh in my mind about what I had to do around my CV. And it's interesting because when I applied for my specific role within Morgan Stanley, I didn't fit the job spec 100%. I think what a lot of people tend to do is they think I've got to cross off all of these different things within a job spec to be able to apply for a role. I took a punt and I didn't cross off. I probably about 50% of what the job spec was saying and my relevant, or what I thought was relevant experience when I applied for the role. But I applied for it because I had a real passion about wanting to go into diversity and inclusion, and I've got a passion around people. I like working with people and seeing the best and seeing where people get to. So I took a punt. I sent in my CV and then had a conversation with the talent team who called me when they got my CV. We had a chat and I then expanded on what my CV was and my experience was. And I think one of the things that did come across and why I got my first interview is the passion that I showed and what that I really wanted to do the role. So yeah, I've only had sort of 6 months experience, relevant experience, if I think about it specifically for the role, but my experience throughout my career, I've worked within banking for about 15 years. There were lots of different things that you wouldn't necessarily align to the role. So I think one of the things you do need to do when you're applying or when you're looking at your CV and looking at your job spec is thinking, okay, this is the role. These are the different qualities that they want with the role. What have I got that doesn't necessarily align, but I could transfer into that role? And I think one of the things I did when I interviewed is I went in saying, okay, I don't have the specific experience you're asking for, but I can add value by, and I was showing how I could add value to the role that they were looking at. So it may not have been in the job role to start off with, but I was showing that I really wanted to come in and make a change, and that made a big difference for me.
Brilliant. I think one thing Sharon echoes here is that there is an appreciation for initiative and for doers, and you kind of explaining what you bring to the role. You might not have the experience, but you have the wisdom, and you're able to apply some of that wisdom to the role. Will just give you a leg up. But before I see there are some questions coming in on some other specifics regarding some specific departments, but I just want to bring in Chantel here to add a couple of words of wisdom on what Sharon has been telling us. Chantel?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what Sharon said. If we think about, like, everybody is unique, right? Everybody has that unique perspective and that unique skill set that they bring. So to Sharon's point, think about how you can make yourself add value in sort of a way that nobody else can, and that will get you far. I mean, in terms of like tangible tips for CVs, I could talk about this for about an hour. I won't, because that's probably quite boring for everybody else. But one of the things that stood out for me when I was in recruiting was making sure that as much as possible, the details and the skills and the work that you were doing, that you would detail on your CV, was backed up by results. So it was results driven. So if you're in a role that is looking for or affects revenue, how can you demonstrate your impact on revenue in your current company? Make sure you put the outcomes as well as what you were doing. So I worked on X project, but what was the outcome of the project? Sort of talk to us, tell us that story on paper, because it brings you in, it brings you sort of to the forefront of the recruiter's mind. I would say keep it concise. There's a lot of debate online about how long a CV should be. I'm not a believer on putting a sort of limit on it, but I think if enough information is down to be able to demonstrate your skill sets and what you can bring, then that's fine. I think if there's too much information and it sort of swamps the point you're trying to get across, but if you need 2 pages, if you need 2.5 pages to be able to demonstrate that, absolutely fine. I would also make sure that you include any additional responsibilities outside of your day-to-day role. There may be elements of the new role that you're applying for that aren't covered in your day-to-day work, but they may be covered in, I don't know, some volunteering that you're doing, or an employee network group that you're involved in. So don't be afraid to bring that in and present yourself as a more well-rounded sort of candidate and prospect for hopefully Morgan Stanley, but any employer that you look to apply to. And also proofread. I think it's such a big thing, but any sort of grammatical errors, they do stand out in the mind of recruiters and of hiring managers. So just get someone else to read your CV, get someone else to 4-eye check it before you send it in, because that is just an easy way to make sure that you're not standing out for the wrong reasons. But I'll stop there because I could go on forever.
Brilliant, Chantel. I really like that last part, proofread. It's just, it's funny how people do 99% of the work, and then that 1%, like, they fall by the wayside, because one of the main requirements to work in an environment such as ours is you need to have attention to detail. And if you don't have attention to, and the easy way to demonstrate that is having a CV that you don't have obvious mistakes in them. I think one question came through the through Zoom as we're talking. What are the key informations you expect to see on the resume of someone applying to a risk management / market risk role? So I work within firm risk management. What I would say is, baseline, we look for analytical people. Now, by analytical people, I don't mean we need someone that is hardcore analytics through all across the board. So by hardcore, I mean you've done mathematics, or you've done physics, or you're doing something in engineering. We do have people that have done philosophy, that have done religion, that work within risk management. What we need you to be able to do is to be able to apply some common sense to a real life problem, which is what we try and which we try and do every day of our lives. So our departments vary depending on the department that you're applying for. If you're applying for risk analytics, then you need those hardcore analytic skills. All the way if you're applying for a COO job, which is or a governance job, there's a need for you to demonstrate that you can think, you have some basic analytics thinking in as a skill set. So that I don't know if he has anything to add there, but
I think you summarized it well, Fru. I mean, just to clarify, I work in risk governance. I have an economics degree with an audit background, so nothing specifically analytical or extremely technical, but it's all about transferable skills, as the answer to most of these questions is transferable skills. But yeah, don't ever feel that you're automatically ruled out of that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing where you could go on LinkedIn, type in a job title you might be interested in, you'll find someone with that job title, and you can look into their background and do that a few times, and you'll see how different the backgrounds are. That helped me a lot, especially when I was graduating, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Fee. Now, there's a nice segue into the next question that I had on my list is, what qualities make a candidate stand out during the interview process? How can you differentiate yourself and be remembered? For this question, I will go to Fee for you to start. Then I'll get Sharon to add some few words on that. Sophie? I think what you have to remember when you go into the interview is they've read your CV. They've probably read it a few times, and they've compared it to other people's, and they know what you're qualified in. You've kind of done that part already. You do need to be able to recite your own CV. Don't go into the interview not knowing what's on your own CV. That's bad. But beyond that, you have to kind of think of the interview as almost a tester at working with this person, especially in the interviews where you're with your line manager or your head of department. I think my Morgan Stanley interviews, I had HR, my line manager, his line manager, and then his line manager. So there were quite a few of these. And they want to know what a day working with you would be like. So your personality has got to show through there, but also your professionalism. It can seem difficult to marry those things, but there is a blend of the two, which is, are you going to sit there with your head down and never ever speak to anyone? And that doesn't feel great. But also, are you going to tell jokes all day and no one's ever going to get any work done? That might not feel great either. But there's a balance to that. You've experienced that in other ways. It's almost inherent, and you can also feel the vibe of the person interviewing you and what they want to see from you. I'd say the other thing is just self-awareness in the interviews. I've done a few assessment centers moderating them, and the candidates with self-awareness really stand out. That being able to say, I've never done that, but I've done this, and I know that maybe that skill that I've done in this completely different thing would probably work in that thing, really helps. It shows that you can think on your feet, you know what you can do, you know how you would like to grow, also really shows. I would say those are my top tips.
Brilliant. Sharon?
Thanks, Fee. I endorse a lot of what you say. I think if I'm bringing myself to life here so I can give real examples. For me, it's about the personality and being able to connect with the interviewer and interviewee. I think it's important to be very professional, but also have a personality as well. What I felt worked well for me is also bringing in some personal examples where I could give real examples which would stand out so that the interviewer would potentially remember me as well. I think it's important that when you're interviewing, one of the things I did, or made sure I did my research. We've spoken about that, did research, but also having questions at the end of the interview. I think the worst thing is that at the end of the interviewer asks you if you got any questions, and you haven't got any. So have a list of questions, and some of them may have actually come out during the course of the interview, which is all great, but you should have at least 1 or 2 interviews, and sensible interviews, right? So not how many holidays will I get or anything like that, but some really constructive questions that you can align to the role that you're doing. So some of the things I tend to ask when I've been interviewing before is, what does good look for? So for the successful candidate that comes in within 6 months, what does good look like from your perspective? What should the objectives or what should the goals have been for that person to say this person has really made an impact when they come in? So just make sure you've got some good questions to ask as well.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Sharon. I see we had a question here through Zoom that says, how can you show that you add value as a graduate? We'll direct this to Isaiah, who came through our graduate program. Isaiah?
Yeah, no, good question. But I think coming in as a grad is challenging, right? Because the first week, the first month that you hit the desk, you're still learning. You're not gonna be the person that's come in and built something brand new off the cuff, right? But what you will bring and what you can demonstrate that you can bring is your thinking, your mindset, right? So are you someone that can innovate? Are you someone that can, think on their own feet? Someone that's going to be a self-starter, right? So there's all of these things and all of these traits and characteristics that through an interview, someone like, if I was interviewing you, I would try and assess and try and build out, right? So for example, at university, what have you done? Have you chaired a committee? Have you chaired a society? How have you changed that? Maybe you're an entrepreneur and you started a side business. Can you demonstrate that? Can you speak about that? Can you show when you run into an issue or when you solve the problem? It's these sort of skills and characteristics that then allow me to see, okay, look, this person is pretty much all over it, right? Once they get in, no matter what task I give them, they're going to take it away, run with it, and probably come up with something great, right? So it's about those skill sets. And look, you might have them, but you also need to be able to communicate them in an interview and actually talk about them and provide examples, because if you can't show to me that you can demonstrate those, then it's tough, even if you can in your mind, right? If you can't get that out and communicate that out, it's not going to come across. So yeah, I think it really comes down to basically showing those key points that I called out, right? Initiative and sort of the state of your mind, and as to what your future progression might look like and how you can add value to the firm.
Brilliant. Thanks, Isaiah. I think a lot of our graduates fall in the trap that when they work through, graduates in general fall in the trap that when they walk through the door, they think there is an expectation on them to be experts when they're not. There's no expectation like that. What we expect from you is to be able to learn quickly and be able to start to demonstrate you can learn quickly.
Can I jump in there? Because I think
yes.
You made a really important point, and I think that extends beyond graduates. I think when people are interviewing, and obviously we expect you to do a baseline level of research, but I think there is this expectation that you are expected to know everything that Morgan Stanley is doing, and it's impossible for people to be able to do that. So I think Fee touched on it, like sort of having that self-awareness, but from a recruiter's perspective, when you're in the interview and you don't know what they're talking about, be honest about it, because I can't tell you the number of times someone said, oh yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. My next question is inevitably going to be, okay, explain to me what I've asked you, and then you can't, and then it creates an awkward situation. So I think there's always opportunities to spin it, right? If you don't understand, be like, oh, I've never had the pleasure of working on that particular product, but it's something that I've always wanted to learn about because of X, Y, and Z. It's something that I'm willing to do that research. I think from a Morgan Stanley perspective, what we really are looking for is aptitude and willingness to learn and grow. So if you can demonstrate that in your interview, it's really key. And I think that extends to graduates and experienced hires.
Thank you, Chantel. That's really well said. On that, I'll move to the next question, which I had, which was around what are the key transferable skills you look for within your team during the recruitment process? I'll direct this to Isaiah again. You're on a streak, Isaiah.
Sure, no, it's fine. So, as I was saying, I work in the finance division, right? It's a numbers-based role. Obviously, financial services, most of the divisions are sort of numbers-based roles. Mine in specific, we're working closely with senior management. So there's a few key skills that are required for my role and that are transferable, right? So you don't necessarily need to have been in the financial services industry to have them. And I think I'd probably list them out as number one being sort of problem solving, right? So every day we're faced with a new challenge, or be it a new methodology that we've had to analyze. Maybe the PRA, our regulators, have come up with something new that means that we have to change the way that we think, or something in a process is broken. We can't simply turn the handle. We have to problem solve. We have to think on our feet. We might have to perform new trend analysis or communicate to the business why something's happened. So problem solving is a key one, right? And how can you demonstrate that? If you've studied a STEM subject, as Fru was sort of mentioning, sort of sciences, technologies, and engineering and maths, that's probably an easy win, right? So those are typically sort of or thought of as analytical and problem solving type subjects. If you haven't, then again, sort of back to probably work experiences, you should be able to draw out on experiences where you have problem solved, or where you have come up with creative ideas to innovate and to change processes or to change things. I think that's definitely one of the top ones on my list. If I keep thinking, communication is probably the second one, right? So the ability to not necessarily just present, right? So typically when people think of communication, they think about standing in front of audience and just talking, right? It's not necessarily just that. Fine, you might have to do that in some of your role, present an idea or present a pitch or something, but it's also the ability to just clearly communicate your ideas and present them to clients or seniors, or even within the team, right? So I might have a challenge, or I might have an idea, but if I can't clearly articulate that to my manager or someone above, then progress isn't going to be made, right? Change isn't going to happen unless people can get behind my idea, and that requires me to, in effect, sell it a little bit. And it's also written communication. So, in my role, we're probably, we might be asked a question from management. Perhaps they want to, understand how a certain area of the business works or doesn't work for whatever reason. I need to put that on a slide and be able to then present it back to them in a clear and concise way. So it's identifying the right language to use. It's identifying, the right things to pull out. It's all of that. So that communication is definitely a key one. A large part of my role is storytelling. So that comes under the same umbrella of communication, being able to look at the numbers, identify a story, and then pitch that up and push that forward. For your interview, I'd probably gauge if you're a good communicator from your body language, from the way that you answer questions, right? I might ask you, tell me a bit about yourself. And if you start at the end and then finish at the beginning, that's, not chronological order, it probably is not making sense. Whereas, if you have a good flow to it, if your replies are clear, concise, and short and to the point, I'm thinking that this person is a good communicator and can, ultimately fit the right skill set for the role, right? And another thing I'd say is sort of time management. This is probably the third and last one, time management and the ability to multitask, right? So we all work in quite demanding jobs. I might have in my mind that today, look, I've got a block free and I'm going to work on this specific project that's due out tomorrow. But then management might have a different idea for me. I might get a phone call last minute and, there's an urgent request and I have to then reprioritize and then identify, what I need to do now or what I can push back later, right? So it's that, and ensure that in your CV, perhaps you had an extra side job alongside your university studies, or again, if you are an experienced hire, you should be able to demonstrate that from an existing role that you've done. Right, so I think those would be my top three ones. So problem solving, communication, and the ability to multitask and time manage.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Isaiah. So just want to remind our audience that this is a specific requirement for a specific role, which Isaiah will be interviewing for. So if in case you ever find yourself being interviewed by Azai, you know exactly how to impress him. But we do have other roles, like I said, within the firm, which do require from either more analytical skills. So sometimes you might not feel confident saying what you think, but you feel like you can write it down or try and explain it. You do have people within the firm that will be happy to have those type of interviews with you, where you get to demonstrate your thinking on a piece of paper. So there's a wide range. There's a wide range of ways to impress the person interviewing you. So you need to do your homework, look at the role you're applying for, and what skills they are after, and look for a way to demonstrate that you have those skills. Brilliant. Thanks again, Azai. That was really insightful. Our next question is again, I will take it down to Fee. How can someone best reflect their competencies through their CV and in an interview?
So I think I'm going to answer this in a weird way, because I'm going to say what I used to do terribly wrong at this. But it's particularly as a graduate, and I'd say after my first job, which was in audit at PwC, I would always answer these questions with, well, I was part of the audit team that did the biggest financial services audit. People go, great, what did you do? And you really need to make sure, particularly on your CV, because that's the first impression of you, that you're saying, I did this. As part of this team, I did this, which contributed to this really big thing. I'm not saying never hide the really big thing, explain the big thing, but we really need to know what you did, what was your contribution, what was your achievement out of it. If you're coming straight out of uni and applying, you have done project work, you have done big presentations, you have done group coursework. What did you do on those things? That's what's going to make you shine. You know, Morgan Stanley is not hiring the group. They want to know what you can bring to the table. I'd say that's a really big CV one. In interviews, I have done quite a few interviews in my life, and I'd say at every single interview I have ever done, someone has gone, tell me a time that something's gone wrong. How did you react and what did you do? Have an answer to that question. If there is one question you should prep for, it's that one. Everyone has asked me that question. And again, what did you do? Not what did your boss tell you to do? What did you do? How did you react? You are the star of this show. You are trying to shine. You are trying to put your best foot forward. Just make sure whenever you frame anything, that's what's the highlight of it. Yeah, I would say those are my top tips.
Brilliant. I think it's a nice segue into the next question I actually had, which was around, can you describe what an individual can expect when interviewing for a role at Morgan Stanley? And I think, Fee, you just hit it on the head there with your answer. But one thing I wanted to point out here was, when you come for an interview, I normally tell people you're coming for a discussion where we are interested to hear what you have to say, where you are the main attraction. I'll not be sitting in that room if I did not want to listen to you. So that's power you have, and make sure you use it. And make sure you use it by composing yourself, by thinking through what you want to say, and by being honest, right? If you're not too sure about something, you should be able to say, I'm not too sure. I think I will do it this way. What do you think? Because again, it's a conversation, it's give and take. So you will get that when you come to interview with us. And one thing I really appreciate about this firm is that you're working with so many talented people that are not afraid to be challenged. They actually welcome challenge. They want to listen. What do you have to say? What's your opinion? So being able to communicate that in a manner which the other person can understand and the other person can work with you towards a solution, it's a very, very, very big win. I will pause here and throw it out to my fellow panelists if they have anything to add on it.
I think you hit it on the nail there, Fru. I think one of the things that when you're bringing new people in is for people to bring in their new ideas and not, I think sometimes when you've been in a firm for a period of time, you sort of get used to a certain way of working. I think when you bring other people in or new people in, they're looking for people that will come in with new ideas, new suggestions, and to challenge the status quo in some situations as well. So I think that's one of the key things when we're bringing people in that we're looking for.
Brilliant, thank you. Fee, I noticed, you have anything to add on that?
No, I think Sharon hit the nail on the head, to be honest. She said everything that I could have said.
Brilliant, thank you. I think this reflects the teamwork we got going on in the firm, right? Okay, I think we another question that really ties into this one, which I had, was in your experience, how can an individual demonstrate their values aligned to a company's value and culture? I would throw this one first to Chantel, and then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Fru, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think there are a number of ways you can do this, and I think a lot of this has been mentioned and touched upon, but the first thing I would do is do your research. What are the company values, for example? At Morgan Stanley, we have 5. I could throw it out to the rest of my panelists and see if everybody knows them all, but I won't do that. I won't embarrass them like that. But we have 5 core values, right? That we sort of live by, we breathe by. This is what drives our sort of our thinking and our day-to-day work. So look up what the values are. Tap into your network. Like Isaiah said, you'll know somebody who maybe knows somebody that works at the firm that you're looking to apply for. So understand from them how they interpret the values of the firm that you're looking to apply for. I'd also say, and I think Sharon touched upon this a little bit when we talk about the interview process, the interview process is a two-way street. We are interviewing you, but you are also interviewing us to make sure that we, as a firm, can provide you what you need, whether that be sort of development opportunities, a space to grow, a space to be nurtured. So use the interview as a way of judging whether the company's values align with what your personal values are. So the way the interviewer is interacting with you, the way they're responding to some of your questions, obviously think of some thought-provoking questions to sort of bring that to light. But those are the sort of the main ones that I would say are a way of sort of testing, almost pressure testing the company values to make sure they're aligned to yours.
Brilliant. Thank you so much on that. Sharon, just wondering if you have anything to add on this.
Yeah, and Chantel's covered it, right? I mean, the values, I mean, as Chantel said, there are 5 values, right? And they're not hard values to follow. If you've got integrity and you're doing the right thing, our values are really good values. I mean, I'll just throw out a couple of them, but putting the client first, it's what you do just as a person of integrity, you do the right thing, right? Committed to diversity and inclusion is one of the values, which again, sort of wheeled me in when I joined Morgan Stanley, because a firm that actually has diversity and inclusion as one of their core values, I think is fantastic. And everybody has to align with that. And then giving back, I think it's apt at the moment because we actually have a month or 2 months, I think it's a month or 2 months, where we commit to everybody can go out and do global volunteering. So we're giving back to the community, and the firm sponsors that. They allow you to go out for a day or how many days it takes to go out and actually support and give back to the community. So our values are they're not weird or really difficult ones to align with. So as Chantel mentioned, have a look at them and see if they align to what you want out of your career. But I think they're quite easy ones to follow.
Brilliant. I think one of the things you would notice as you interviewed by us, we're pretty much a very collaborative firm. We collaborate amongst each other, and we try and make sure we end up with the best product. Whatever you're working with, wherever we work together to make sure that we can improve on it and make sure what we are putting out for our clients is the best product. And it, like Sharon says, our values, It does what it says on the tin. You don't need further explanation for those values. I worked in other companies where I kind of left, and I think after time there, I still could not understand what the values meant. And when you don't understand it, then you can't leave it. You can't live up to it. But yeah, they're quite straightforward, and once you understand it, then it's easy for you to do it, because it's also easy for you to be held accountable when you breach it. So really appreciate the answers there, Chantel and Sharon. I think we're having a couple of questions coming from our audience here, and I just want us to turn our attention and answer a couple which I saw that were really interesting. The one of the questions that was asked was, what technique do you use to prepare and handle your nerves during an interview before an interview? So I will Chantel knows me well, knows my hobbies, so I'm not going to disclose them, but I'll pass it on to my fellow panelists to share how do you get yourself in the zone? Isaiah, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think for me it's practice. I mean, I haven't done a interview for a very long time, but when I was applying for the placement, one thing that shocked me, I feel like if you get me an interview room, I feel like I'll probably do a good job. But one thing that shocked me was the telephone interview. So I remember my careers fair. I went to my careers center at uni, and the woman at the time said, "Look, you should do a practice interview. I'll give you a call and we can just run through the questions." She also was really good at looking through my CV as well, so I'd recommend that. But anyway, she gave me a call. I kind of froze, right? It was like my first telephone interview that I did, and I froze, and I thought, wait, this isn't right. Like I should be smashing this, but it was just very nerving. But after we ran through it, and I had a couple practice runs, I got really confident at doing them, and it really just helped with the nerves ongoing. So I think definitely practice is key, right? Once you become confident that you've done it before, you can repeat it, you know what you're talking about, you've done your research on the role, there's not really too much that can go wrong, right? It might be more helpful now that a lot of the interviews might be on Zoom, so you can have notes up in front of you. That could also help, but it could also go the other way, right? If you have too much and you're trying to read through and Control F and find the question that's being asked, that will probably throw you off. So I think preparation is key. So it's the answer that I'd give.
Yeah, brilliant. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you say you need to practice. One of my mentors once told me, under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to what you know. So without practice, you don't have anything to fall back to, right? So if you practice, when under pressure, you fall back to what you've practiced, and it will just be, muscle memory kicks in. So it's very important to practice. But again, another thing is, remember the person in front of you is just another human being that wants to know what you know, right? If you put that in your mind, is someone that wants to know what I know. And if you do know something, then why do you need to be nervous, right? And which I believe you will not be on this call if there was nothing that you knew about, right? So it's all getting yourself in that space that you understand your worth, understand what you bring to the table, and you practice communicating that to another person who is very excited to have you on the team, because he needs help. That's why he's trying to recruit someone, right? So I think that was a brilliant question.
I've got one tip from my recruiting days that I used to sort of tell when I was prepping my candidates.
Yeah.
If an interviewer asks you a question and you just need to gather your thoughts, but you don't want there to sort of be 10 seconds of sort of dead silence, what I used to do and tell individuals to do is take a sip of water when they finish asking the question. That gives you time to just gather your thoughts. and then launch straight into answering the question, rather than sort of babbling and filling it with ums and ahs and things like that. Every interview will give you the space to take a sip of water, rehydrate, because we understand when we're sitting on the other side that it is quite a nerve-wracking process. So that was one thing that I used to do. That's what I did when I interviewed here at Morgan Stanley, and I was interviewing with an executive director for the first time. If I needed a bit of time, just take a sip of water and then go into it.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Chantel. I think there's another question that came in, which I found really, really interesting. It goes that within the UK, does Morgan Stanley provide a variety of development opportunities once within a role? I think, Sharon, I'm looking to you. Are you able to take that one?
Yeah, and again, I can use my experience, right? Because I've only been here for just under a year. I can categorically say yes for that, using myself as an example. I've been given lots of different opportunities to have career development in my role. And I think what's good about Morgan Stanley, what I found is no matter what level you're at, there's always different levels of training or development opportunities. One of the things I've done personally is I've spoken to my manager as well. So as well as just having the number of career opportunities available just generally, liaising with and having a close relationship with your manager also allows you to then expand on your career development. So if you sort of start at day one and you know where you want to be in a year or 2 years, you can set up a development plan with your line manager, and they can help you and provide resources to actually get you there. So from my experience within the firm, there's lots of opportunity, lots of it out there.
I think one thing to add to that is professional development. So in terms of professional qualifications, so within the finance division in specific, one of the things that really attracted me to Morgan Stanley was the fact that they sponsor the ACA or certain qualifications, ACA being one of them. So that's the Chartered Accounting qualification, which I did in the first 2 years of me being here at the firm. But they also had options such as the CFA, the CIMA, the ACCA, et cetera, et cetera. And these are, renowned qualifications that are you can take with you for life, right? And the firm sponsored it and give you time to study it at college as well, which is really good. So that's another definite benefit of the firm.
I think it's also worth flagging there are also so many sort of, I guess, informal avenues for development as well. So at Morgan Stanley, we're really proud to sort of have our employee network groups, of which I think all of us on the call sit on at least one of those. And that gives you the opportunity to network and learn from individuals that sit outside of your division. So both Fru and I sit on the what we call the Afro and Caribbean Business Alliance steerco alongside with Sharon. And Fru and I have had so many calls that I learned so much from Fru just organically. Our roles don't really sort of interject day to day, but being part of a network, getting involved in outside activities outside of your sort of BAU, as you would call it, business as usual, gives you that opportunity to expand. And then that could lead into things like internal mobility because you've networked with people in other divisions. That maybe is your next step is outside of your division. So the avenues sort of to explore are almost endless at Morgan Stanley.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Chantel. That's really good insight, which I think people really need to know. One question, which it ties really nicely into the question that came in as well, which said, can you explain what the hierarchy is at MS? I'll start by saying we're pretty, by the way we operate, we kind of have a flat structure. So yes, there is hierarchy, but to a certain extent, it goes out of the window sometimes when we are trying to come to a solution. So you have the most senior folks in the firm are managing directors. You have them speaking directly to an analyst who is the most junior person in the firm. And between that, we do have a different grades. So, but the grades that are clearly defined and which are uniform across different divisions are analyst, associate, VP, executive vice president, executive director, as well as managing director. Different divisions have some other steps in between, it's if you are interested in a particular division, we'll be happy to come back to you on that question. You just send it in, right? So that is I think we can carry on speaking. We can. There are just so many questions that we would love to answer for you, but unfortunately for us, this was just a 1 hour time slot. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank all my fellow panelists for all your wisdom, all the insight, and your advice. Sharing is caring, as they say. But most of all, sharing with this group and encourage this group helps me achieve that personal goal of making it the worst kept secret that Morgan Stanley is the best place to work for diverse talent out there. So I want to personally thank all of you for coming on and doing this today. To you, the audience that has been listening to us, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions through our different representatives. We'll try our best to answer them. But one thing I want you to go away with is, please have the courage to take the first step. Take the first step in looking at our website. Take the first step in looking at what job openings we have there on our website. Take the first step in speaking to any of your contacts that's in Morgan Stanley and get the ball rolling. You might be surprised where it would lead you. So with that, I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. And hopefully we'll speak to you all within Morgan Stanley, and I'll have the pleasure of calling you